Hello, handsome.
Well, the inevitable, unavoidable Kurt Doolittle himself on the 4th of July, no less. Isn't that wonderful?
Yes.
It is wonderful. And it's like this, we're doing great work, Kurt. I want to thank you for showing up.
We're going to blow the mind. You're going to blow your mind and the audience's mind today.
Uh-oh. But before we do that, give them a moment. Give them a moment to hear me. Allow them to push the button here, right there, and that one right there. And then don't forget this one right here. All these buttons are important, and I don't know what they're important for. And the comments, they're just delightful. Please allow us to enjoy your mind and fill us in with what's going on below. Isn't that special, Kurt?
Share the madness.
That's right. That's right. And I'll apologize especially to Uncle Kenny for interrupting Kurt in his long discourses of complex logic that he's easily derailed from, because my neuroticism has escaped me, and I feel the need to interject, and I apologize for this. And I just simply, Uncle Kenny, please don't comment below about my neuroticism. And so, but we have fresh coffee, and we're energized and ready to make things happen in the real world.
Okay, so in preparation for today, there's a reason I take a long time to do this stuff, right? Because it's hard.
In case you are wondering, people, I am here to vouch for Kurt.
So, hopefully at least at the beginning, it will be a bit of mind blowing. I mean, the grammars are pretty mind blowing, right? I mean,
it's interestingly. And wait, it said like this, Kurt. It said, it is an ill wind that blows no mind.
Yes.
So this one is not. It is a good wind. It blows mind.
I think the first principle and the triangles, that's pretty mind blowing, because that sort of creates the tree from which all knowledge has sprung, right?
That's right.
I think once you understand that's evolutionary computation, then and you reduce everything to evolutionary computation, that's pretty.
Just to say that is mind blowing.
I think that once you realize the grammars are the science by which we try to reflect the before, during, and after laws of the universe, I think that's pretty mind blowing. I used to think truth was pretty mind blowing, but now it's old hat. And
you're used to it. That's just.
Well, I'm just used to it. And I used and I got used to morality, reciprocity being what it was.
Right.
But it was pretty mind blowing originally to be able to enumerate it all. And once you sort of have reciprocity and demonstrated interest, really, that's what most people want to know, right? I mean,
well, I just want to say this to the audience before we begin blowing the minds, is that just to be able to understand Kurt and to think you understand Kurt, despite the fact that you think he's just speaking English. It's just that it takes a minute to let that sink in, because you think you understand him better than you actually understand him until you've been really working at it for at least a year. And unless the book comes out faster, and that might accelerate your process.
Well, it's going to come out faster now.
It is going to come out faster. No. Shall we get to work, Kurt?
So
like I say, I wanted to apologize for trying to make you work on your birthday. That was rude. And I do not wish to be rude to you, sir. I want you to be aware of that.
Everybody knows about my health issues, right? So I'm on a new antibiotic, right? And it's getting me this. So that's what's causing the chronic fatigue. All right. So I'm back on the antibiotic. I'm sleeping fucking 20 hours a day again. So, I mean, my whole birthday thing is like, that was about all I had for the day, right? So don't feel bad at all. I mean, it was that was good. I wanted to go visit Brandon yesterday, and I just couldn't. Couldn't do it. But on the other hand, let's continue my point, which is I want to hopefully we're going to blow the audience's mind today with, because, the grammars, but now we're going to get the relationship between the grammars and the sexes. And that's going to answer all the big questions. Right? Now,
Hey, Kurt, I want to say you never under-promise. We're going to answer all the big questions today, right now, in fact.
if you get what I'm going to tell you today, you're going to walk around saying, oh my fucking God, for at least 3 days, right? If not for the next 3 years.
That means you, audience, you.
Yeah.
All of you.
Well, but the point is that this, so what I did for my birthday, right? I bought myself a computer game. I haven't played a computer game since Skyrim came out in 2011 or something like that. And that's because I haven't had a computer that would play a game on it. And I did that deliberately, right? Right. But for various reasons, you can play this stuff online now. So I said, I'm going to have a couple of vacation days for my birthday, right? The thing is, when I get vacation days, it gives the rest of my brain time to do its work in the background. So I probably need to take more vacation days because that's what allowed me to put this together, despite the fact that Brad has been hounding me to get it back. I'm teasing you, Brad.
Got over it.
Doing his job of trying to get me back on track on this. So, my court thing was over 2 weeks ago. I've had a few vacation days playing a stupid computer game. I've had lots of sleep because that's what the antibiotics are doing to me. So anyway, so that's what we're going to talk about today, is we're going to get back on lying. Now, when we last left our intrepid adventurers, we had discovered that we probably should put male and female lying. We should discuss the male and female methods of lying together.
That's right.
And so what we're going to do is do that. Now, again, for the audience, there's a difference between Brad and I doing chats, where we just take a couple of topics of the day and we talk through those and see how they all wind together in. Right. And then there's times where Brad and I are reviewing something I've written, right? So that he understands it and can poke holes in it. And then there are times when see, I do that Connecticut thing. That makes me nuts. I mean, I didn't do that until I moved to Connecticut. And there's another one. There are these bad habits that Connecticut people have. My grandfather used to list them off the top of his head. I can't remember what they are, but every time he used one, he'd sit back with his pipe and his big, chair in front of the fireplace and said, "It's going to."
He's trying to bring you back to the King's English, sir.
Right. It's just very funny. I mean, it's beautiful in its own way. Anyway.
Attaboy.
And it was with just such disdain. You can't. We've lost the class system so much, but of course, my grandfather was still part of that. Lesser aristocratic nonsense. So he with the disdain, he could communicate.
It comes with that little sting.
Well, it's just amazing, You mere human, you.
Oh,
you peasant, you barely worthy of occupying space in my presence.
Right. I want to try to bring you back inside the pale. It's going to, Kurt.
But he was so charming. On the other hand, he had the big moose that my great grandfather shot, right? Big moose over there.
Right.
And he would put a fresh cigarette in the moose's mouth once a year. He had his own wit and humor, just not much of it. But anyway, so I have all these Connecticutisms that I desperately try that I didn't have when I lived in New York. But
they're like pollutants.
They are, and it's like cursing. I didn't curse until I moved to Connecticut.
Those people,
And it's a very, well, because you know why, it's this very blue collar place, right? It's very blue collar.
We'll try to get you over it.
It's
That's not as important as getting you done with your book. To
well,
me,
okay,
right?
fine. So
I'm going to help your grandfather any way I can. But it's like, that's in second place right now, Gramps.
so where the fuck was, so anyway, so we started out and we were gonna, I don't know, so anyway, I went off and I had some time to think, and I said, well, we could just do this and tie it all together. And the reason it's become so important, so central to me, is that, you know, I've said we've spent all this time talking about logic, but we've not spent all this time talking about lying. Well, there's a reason in Western civilization that we didn't spend all that time on investigating lying, because there's a very real danger in our civilization when you lie, because there's a very real prohibition against lying in our civilization.
Right.
So the means we came up with for lying are quite sophisticated.
They have to be because we punish people who lie.
Yeah. And then we don't take seriously women.
Oh my.
There you go. That was the right answer. But that was the answer.
I cannot be seen agreeing with that. I can't just go like this, like, oh my.
No, but that's the answer.
Such patriarchy.
But we didn't
wait, you're remedying this situation. We are now going to take the women seriously and
Exactly
consider how they lie. That's for you ladies. This is where it begins. Kurt, I'm going to tip my hat to you, sir, for taking the women seriously.
So we have to take women seriously because they have the capacity to industrialize their method of lying. Now, and they have the resources to industrialize, and they provide others with the incentive to industrialize lying. And so men lie, but and so what we're going to do is explore the difference between how men and women lie. Right? But when I'm going to start calling Simon Baron Cohen Saint Baron Cohen pretty soon, even though he's Jewish. If I can have Saint Thomas Sowell, who's black,
right?
Right. I can have Saint Simon Baron Cohen, who's Jewish. All right, and I can have up there with Saint Judge Scalia, and now black Saint Judge Thomas.
Yeah.
So we're getting our sainthood to be race and religion independent.
Diversification, are we?
Yeah, quite by accident. I always think it's funny that.
I thought it was meritocratic.
Well, of course, it's meritocratic, but
it's
I
not
don't
accidental by any means.
No, but I mean, it doesn't matter if you got 140 IQ and you're right. It doesn't fucking matter. The problem is the underclass can't work by truth. They have to work by all sorts of other nonsense, and so they are a problem, right? We've known this for a long time. I get called.
Wait! I want to discuss that for a minute before I allow you to continue. Which is this: they are not so much a problem, but they are a resource. They are a resource, and they are exploited by some.
Well, yeah, they're a resource under agrarianism. They weren't a resource before agrarianism. They were a resource under agrarianism. And after industrialism has eliminated the utility of the migration of their labor, now they're no longer a resource anymore. They're a dead weight cost. This is the problem. This is the problem of modernity. That's the problem of the next 100 years. right, is that, hey, it was all well and good for us to increase the population dramatically because, and a lot of it from not dying under industrialization, and that, Western industrialization, medicine and technology. The problem is that those people that are living, a large number of them are useless. In other words, they cannot find a way to produce anything that is in the service of others, except not being a pain in the ass.
That is not a positive service.
Because
failure of negative service is good, but it's not quite good enough to meet your demands, the needs that you have as a living individual. That was good, Kurt.
So when I start out with this, the reason I'm trying to tie this together, believe it or not, there is a pot of something at the end of Kurt's rhetorical rainbow. So the point I'm trying to get to is that, we start out with the first principles. We went into the sex as the primary axis of computation, and that that cooperation is when we discover that something is mutually beneficial. That's an equal sign. That's basically something that's productive. Now, this assumes that there's a sort of equilibrium between the masculine and feminine desires. So if that turns into a disequilibrium, then we might have some sort of problem, which is what's going on right now. So anyway, the point I want to get to is that sex difference is what we call empathizing versus systematizing, which is a process description, or it's how we weight the differences in calculation. But what is that weight describing? It's describing a difference in time frame. In other words, females are more concerned about the experiential now or near, and the consumption of resources, because they had to evolve to worry about children, and males are more concerned about the then, because they're responsible for the tribe. In other words, herding the females and the children as if they were cattle, which is how we actually treat them. Okay. See, I was just seeing if I could,
just seeing what will happen.
I'm just seeing what I could get away with, what kind of trouble I could start. So the point here at the end, the point here is the degree to which the division of temporal labor,
yes,
reflects the division of sexual labor,
yes,
results in the cognitive difference between with consistent systematizing and inconsistent empathizing.
Okay.
And so that's the problem here, is that consistency and systematizing versus inconsistency and empathizing. In other words, what women are consistent about is being inconsistent.
That's just ridiculous. And I want to thank you for that, because you made me smile again. That was nice. Happy 4th of July.
I mean, it's like, we talk about this all the time, and I'm in a pretty good mood today because I've had a lot of sleep and a few days off. But the answer is that you can either laugh at the absurdity of it and make it a comedy, or you can be overwhelmed by the tragedy of the fact that the universe is a hostile, irradiated wasteland where our existence and survival is extraordinarily statistically impossible. And we seem to get along despite all the bullshit that we'd say that's 99% of it's false. It's just I want by some bullshit negotiating position, but still we manage not to kill each other too often in too large numbers. And it's just amazing to me. So I just look at it, I make fun of it because, we're stumbled along, and it's 2,500 years or so approximately since we discovered reason. And we haven't figured out what's so fucking obvious on introspection. It's just that all we're doing is negotiating from our time frames using what seems consistent in that time frame.
Close
Right?
enough at least, right?
Right. I mean, it's just a joke.
Which always funny. So it's like this equal sign, okay?
Yeah.
And I'm like, this equal sign is like it's only an equilibrium, and it's a momentary, and it's an analog.
Yes.
You wouldn't have to use an equal sign because the thing is itself, it is only an analog. So 2 + 2 does not equal 4 really. It just is an analog for 4.
I think the way you mean that is that whatever 4 was only existed for a moment.
Oh, there you have
2
it.
and 2 always equals 4, but whatever 4 was only is instantaneously perishable and replaced with another potential 4.
Something like that. Yes, indeed. Oh, Kurt, that was a good start.
All right, so I want to reiterate my point.
Yes, sir.
That the world has a first principle. The universe has a first principle. We know what that is. I mean, we know what that is and how to, as a general rule.
Yes.
We will find that general rule applies everywhere because the universe is constructed from one general rule, right? All of it, right? It's just layers and layers of hierarchy. Now, we call the discovery of sets of operations at scales, different scales, the sciences.
Yeah.
So, right. So the operations that you perform on waves are different from the operations you perform on particles, are different from the operations you perform on atoms, which is different from molecules, which is different from biomolecules, different from basically proteins on operate. So proteins being the primary machinery by which organisms are constructed. And you get into DNA and whatever, right? All the way up to you and I making these really complex actions that are unimaginably simple according to that first principle, but it takes trillions of cells in concert cooperating to make that seeming miracle happen. Yes. Right? But the way the universe computes is by starting with a difference and looking for a stable relation under which it can capture new energy. That difference in humans or in animals is sex. It computes a difference in sex, by which some cell or group of cells has found an advantage it can exploit. The advantage humans have found we can exploit is adaptation itself. In other words, we just specialize in adaptation because we can adapt by our neurons instead of adapting by the slow process of biological mutation, or etc. Regulation. Well, you're going to say something?
The bludgeon of the universe. The
really?
Queen. It's just rough.
so we, right, and so the way we've done that is that the greater the difference between our sexual specializations, the more trades we can discover, right? In other words, the more knowledge we have, right, allows for the greatest number of trades, right? And the greatest number of trades allow for the greatest number of consumption, because a trade is a production, whereas everything else is a theft or a parasitism, right? Well, so the problem is that how do the sexes divide their labor? Well, we talk about it as reproductive because that's actually what it is, but in the universe's terms, it's just time. The females calculate in time, and the males in time and they monopolize their attention for themselves and their children. That's really what they do. Whereas males generalize across their populations across time. Okay. And is this an exclusivity? No, it's always a supply-demand curve. So some women are a little more whatever, and men are a little whatever. So what you learn from this is that females specialize in what we call empathizing, and males in what's called I did it again. Systematizing.
Sorry, Kurt.
It's just So this tends to be, this is, so Saint Simon Baron Cohen, so thank you, Saint Simon Baron Cohen, for coming up with the terminology that correctly reflects the two cognitive states. At least though he's the one I think came up with it. He could have got us from somewhere, kind of doubt it though. And it's probably one of those things that emerged in the field, and he's the Einstein equivalent that, codified it as something that we know.
There you go.
And so sorry, I wanted to go make a couple of jokes there and I stopped myself. So anyways, empathizing versus systematizing is a reflection of time and population preference. Women low population and in time and consumption, and in other words, small people, little people, in other words, children, little humans can't tolerate a lot of variation. Right?
Environmentally sensitive, yes.
Right. And big humans can tolerate a lot of variation. They're less environmentally, right? So that's really the difference, right? And so men, we're sort of like the cell wall that has to go out and find resources, and women are like the nucleus that's trying to distribute energy to the different parts of the cell to keep it going. But that's just a way of thinking about it in general terms. So however, what happened in history is that, of course, men have more agency because they're externally focused, and right, and so women have less. Well, what are you teasing me about?
They have to, or they're going to die fast.
Oh, they're going to die. Yeah,
there are no other men are going to protect them more than themselves.
The women can always externalize to the men, which is, I guess I'm leaping ahead, but the women can externalize costs to the males by just being irrational, right? And the men can externalize costs to the females by demanding they force their children to adapt, right? I mean, most men ignore the costs of motherhood.
Yes.
Right? Most women ignore the cost of political and economic order, right? This is just a normal behavior because we actually don't sense it. We're actually
outside the scope of your sensibilities.
Right? So empathizing means that the what's going to get your attention and what you're going to compute, and those things you can empathize with. And systematizing is you're going to grab your attention and cause you to compute those things that you can see as systems over time. So the fact is, we have a sort of the equivalent of color blindness, which is really computational or cognitive blindness, to the other side. This is why men look at women and say, "You make no fucking sense," right? You're crazy. And women say, men are stupid. No, we're not stupid. We're just waiting.
We're merely insensitive.
We're just merely insensitive and paying attention to the rest of the world. So
distracted, right?
So the idea, so this is interesting in the fact that, which you brought up before, that any request, it's just funny. See how funny it is? When you look at the truth, it's just funny. It's so absurd.
I mean, if I may make an interjection, we went to Flagstaff this weekend, and I'm watching my wife talk about the shiny thing over there, just doing her thing, and just like watching her consciousness do this thing in time. Like, wow, that is impressive.
It's hysterical though, right? I mean, but they can do that. That's why they like shopping, because that's what shopping is.
Let them be, and don't interfere with the process.
No, just avoid it. Let the thing do its job, right? You don't, I mean, dogs snip asses, women shop. I mean, what's the difference?
It's all good.
Oh, come on. I thought I would get mileage out of that one.
That was weak coffee, brother.
So anyway, so I'm going, fuck, I lost it.
Okay.
Systematizing,
empathizing, and information processing. You're processing information. Men are.
I was going somewhere. See, that's the problem with your interjections. They're funny, but then I lose what the fuck I'm talking about.
Sorry, Kurt. Sorry, Uncle Kenny. Okay. men are functioning overtime and women are functioning in time, empathizing versus systematizing as information processing, and they are mutually
I'll just start again.
Yep. Okay.
So the reducibility of human behavior to the two sides. The point I guess I was trying to make was that we're colorblind to the other's sexes,
Yes.
cognition, and this is just how attention works, how systematizing works, and it's just why brains are organized differently. Theirs are organized in time, and ours are organized over time. They process more immediate information, sensory, experiential, faster, and we sacrifice that to get more predictive time, systematizing over time, and to be able to act faster. So we're much faster than women. We're stronger, we're faster. Oh, of course we're smarter, but just trying to get that in there. That's not really true, but I had to speak that.
That was merely a lie, just to get.
That was a lie to see if I get a laugh.
It worked too.
So now you see that that's the case. So the second thing I said is that we externalize irresponsibility because of this. We're not cognizant of the female cost. I mean, women. If for most men, if you had to spend 10 minutes with a woman's flighty mind, we'd go mad, right? I can do it for like a third of a second, and it makes me have a panic attack, right? Because you just have to sort of say, how would I think that? Okay, oh my God, right?
Right.
And so, whereas most women, if they had to think like men, they would become enraged.
Yes.
Because it's too exasperating, right? So you have to exert so much control. I mean, even the women that do get agency, they still think like women, right? Which is very interesting. And the way we know that is how men and women do math differently. It's quite interesting. So you have that. Now we have the externalization of costs, and now we have an interesting problem, which is what's happening when we externalize that cost. See, what are we taking responsibility for, and what are we evading responsibility for?
Yes.
So what it turns out is, I say this kindly, is that women are evading responsibility of everything possible in order to monopolize their responsibility for themselves and children.
Yes.
Men are seeking responsibility, right, in order for opportunity in the hierarchy, right, stability. So women seek safety, right, which is different from men seeking security. These are two different words, but it's the same thing. Security in a hierarchy and safety in resource expenditure or responsibility. So when you look at women's reasoning, it's always all human reasoning is reducible in the positiva to acquisition. But all human reasoning, the flip side of that coin, the negativa, is all human reasoning, therefore, requires, because of division of labor, some degree of responsibility and irresponsibility. So the sexes are an inverse relation in responsibility.
No, I have been working on this.
But no, just tell me you got it.
Wait, I got it.
Okay.
Okay, so it's this. There's a drawing picture for you, Kurt, because you have punched upon it so well that I didn't intend to do this, but I'm going to do it, which is the inversion of responsibility between men and women. Looks like that. This is resistance and conductivity. They're inversely related. Does that make sense?
Yes. You and your symbolism are charming.
I appreciate that. Thank you for being kind to me, sir. I want to, that's for the audience. I really do appreciate it because I recognize it as hackle raising for Kurt, and I apologize for that. And I tried to minimize it, but I didn't intend to bring that to bear. But I have been thinking about it because it is, the men are avoiding responsibility in time, and they're giving it to the women because the men are busy overtime. We've got other things working on that we've got things to work on. So the men are evading responsibility for what the women are assuming responsibility for with their empathizing in time. So the men can work overtime and externalize their attention.
Great.
Okay,
So, no, that was well done. No, you actually, that was a contribution. That was good. Right? It's there. We are blind to it. We evolved to be blind to one another's. This gives us differences, responsibilities, right? But as a consequence, how does this affect our negotiations? Because all speech is negotiation by use, and all language is measurement.
Yes.
So women speak in,
however imprecise,
women speak in experiences for which they feel responsible, and men speak in systems for which they seek to be responsible. We both seek and feel it. Right? Right?
Thank you.
So now the difference is, how do men and women tell the truth? Women testify about feels, and men testify about reals. These are just negotiating positions.
Yes, sir.
How do women lie?
They lie about feelings, man. They lie by attempting to induce feelings that are not genuinely inspired. They should not be inspired because they're based on some false assumptions on the part of the person feeling them.
Right. And how do men lie?
They systematically cause
Systematically
the
lie.
system is going to operate different than it actually is going to operate. And this,
so men argue, and we call what women do arguing, but it's not. It's there. We need
emotionally arguing. It's emotional.
We need a word for emotionally arguing. We don't have. So men argue systemically, and women argue empathically. And what is an argument? An argument is an attempt to load, to either remove error, to load information, knowledge, or to obscure information or knowledge. So we call this loading, framing, and obscuring, which is the minus, the plus, excuse me, the minus obscuring, the plus loading, and the plus minus, which is framing. In other words, the combination of the two.
Yes. So obscuring is diminishing the signal of the thing.
Right. And so remember, it's just neurons up there. Yes. Whatever works together gets the attention. And so what is overloading? Overloading is an attempt to force an attention to come to create auto associations.
It's like this. That's overloading.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I love you, Kurt.
So women engage in emotive or empathic overloading.
Yep.
And men engage in systemic overloading. Now, can you
as a mechanism for lying,
well, as a method for either way? You can overload with truth, and you can overload with falsehood, or any combination in between. Because overloading means that you have created an attention, right, that seems consistent with either empathizing or systematizing.
All right, right. So the loading, framing, and obscuring occur in both male and female patterns of discourse.
Okay, cognition and discourse. Now, so the hard part I had was that it was really easy for me to compare masculine sophistry with feminine pill pull.
Okay.
Right. But it became uncomfortable to me when I started dealing with philosophy and theology versus the female versions. And I start then male pseudoscience and the female versions. Now this is interesting in that women actually can't succeed at systematizing. So that no, there's no way to systematize. What you have to do is you have to develop something that adopts some part of male systematizing, yet is still inconsistent. And so what you get,
you've decomposed me, sir.
What you get is pill pull, critique, and what we call straw manning versus heaping of undue praise.
Right.
That's that part's from McDonald. I didn't know that one.
Right.
Right. What's you so it's this is really just I find this don't you find this somewhat disturbing?
I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to interject here, because it's just hanging out with Kurt is very disturbing. It's like this. It's like your mind screams. My mind is screaming and I'm restraining it so that I can listen to Kurt. That was for you in Texas. It's all good, man. Whew, I'm shaking it off, and it is disturbing, and it's all excellent. And you're making great points, and this line of discourse is working very well, Kurt.
Yeah, so it's like another thing I keep telling people. I mean, for me, I use the word disturbing or humiliating or something, right? Or depressing. But it's like, it's the same thing as having Darwin come along and say, well, actually, it sort of just happens this way. Or Galileo and the guys come along, well, heliocentrism, actually, we're not the center of the universe.
What you're calling
or Hubble coming along is like, actually, you know, I hope I got the name right. Was it Hubble? I don't remember. It says, actually, this is just one galaxy, and there's like billions and billions and billions and billions of them.
That's it.
And we're by the way, we don't fucking matter.
Right.
You know, and then they figure out the energy level of the universe. Like, well, matter is just this tiny little bit over here. That's like the accidental remnant. And so we're like the scum, the accidental scum that forms on top of the water, right? I mean, It's just, this whole thing is humiliating.
It's not humiliating. But it goes like this, Kurt. All you're talking about is this moment here when you're like, oh, that's all.
That's all it is. And no, but what's humiliating is all this shit we've written and talked about for 3,500 years.
I talked to my sister about it like this. I say, so many words. It's just so many words.
There's so much stuff.
It can be reduced down so much. Let's just make it more concise.
It's just so simple, and it's so exasperating. And so, you know, of course, I have people say, I read this philosopher or this online personality. And of course, I'm just reducing it down to which set of bullshit lies is this person using to justify a set of priors, whatever. And it's just like this little, you know, it's little list of 5 items that this person is engaging in, and they think they're not a robot.
Wait, you missed this. You missed a word there. They wrongly think they're not a robot. Yeah. Falsely assume themselves to have more agency than they do.
So, you know, it's like, you know, I'm like, who am I, right? I haven't published this yet, but I mean, I literally, you know, I hear philosophers talk today, and they come on and they give, and I'm like, you are worse than the angels on the head of a pin. Because the information is actually there. It's not like it's the 15th century, you know, where you don't have a choice. right? This is like the 21st century. You could just read the fucking answers. They're sitting out there. We have the internet. Everything's free. You could you don't even have to read all whole books in order to get an idea. There's a summary probably in Wikipedia or in an article somewhere that's reduced the whole fucking concept to like 4 sentences. There's no excuse for you to be a fucking idiot.
Wait. So the proper response to the philosopher starting to drone on is this.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's it. Kurt, you've done it. You've distilled it down to its essential function.
I have, but it's like
wonderful.
Well, it's wonderful, except this is the difference. Is like I go back and I'm like, yeah, it's wonderful. It's not like you can sort of get Darwin.
Right.
I'm not sure you could sort of like people know about calculus, but they don't know how to do calculus. So the reason calculus matters is social proof, right? That's the problem here. It's like people still deny Darwin, despite the knowledge and the social proof, right? So I just figure I'm at the end of this chain of guys who starts with really abstract stuff that isn't so material, like the Earth is round, heliocentrism, right? Our Darwinian evolution, economic cooperation, right? And I'm at the end here, and I'm like, well, after you do genetics and IQ and all this other stuff, and you learn logics and language and whatever, we know enough about physics, you can see the pattern. There's this. The difference is, I'm telling you all this shit you don't want to hear. Most. Like you don't want to hear Darwin. You certainly don't want to hear Darwin, that Darwinianism applies to everything in life, especially social orders, right? So you certainly don't want to listen to Doolittle tell you, well, I mean, all we're doing is basically lying to each other. It's really, what.
So Kurt,
so I'm like, I'm at the long line of the last guy. I'm the guy, the scientist you want to believe the least, right?
But that's correct. So it's like this. So it's like I'm in Arizona, so it's like this. You ever see the guys who spin signs?
Oh yeah.
That's all you're doing. You're spinning the sign. Check it out. It's so simple. It's just the simplest simple right there. Check it out.
Well, the thing is that you've been at this for over a year now.
Yes,
some of the guys have been at it for 3 or 4 or 5 years. Eli's been with me the whole time, right? And so you see these guys, and it's like at some point you're like, you get it, right? And you realize it's absolutely positively how it is. End of story. It's just science. It's really fucking boring. This is how it is. And people are just all ass clowns, right? They're semi-domesticated animals running around with scissors, we call politics, right? And so you have this clown world out there, and you're sitting here saying, it's sort of like the oldest systemic, what do you call it? The historians, syntopic historians, the guys who do everything, right? They come to like, yeah, in the end, humans are just really simple, but like we've got that down to a science of exactly why, and it's not an opinion anymore. It's just what it is. It's just
okay.
Sorry, the explanatory power is what it is, and explanatory power is a terrible thing.
What's funny is I had the nice new patient of mine, and I irritated her by saying some science to her, and she said, well, everybody has their opinion. I thought that was funny because I'm like, well, that's not false, but it's like, you misunderstand me, my dear. You just simply misunderstand me.
Yeah, the difference is I didn't give you an opinion.
You can call it my opinion if it makes you feel better, however.
Well, because then she'd have to adapt her feelings, and adapting your reason is easier than adapting your feelings. But if you look at all the guys out there, I mean, I love the internet for this reason. I mean, what a great cesspool of social, cesspool of social laboratory it is, right? Cesspool of social laboratories it is, right? Is that, you see all these guys out there, and it's just men invent systems of clown world. Yeah. The way the left invents unsystemic clown worlds, right? I mean, and it's just It just goes on forever. And there's the only difference is the right is a slightly more correct than the left. The left is just saying, this sucks. And the right is trying to say, I can fix that, but it has to be fixed my way. And it's like, your way's almost as stupid as theirs because it's intolerable. There's only one way to fix it, and that's cooperation. The question is, how do you form cooperation between the feminine and the masculine? And you say, well, that's hard. We should need, no. The point is that the struggle to define new means of cooperation despite new circumstances is what we call evolution. And that's the fucking rule. That's it. There's no other rule. You either pass that test or you fail it. You either help us all pass that test or you help us all to not pass that test. What surprises me is, except for a few Europeans, a few Chinese, and a few Indians, and like 4 Middle Easterners, the whole world is trying to defeat, is trying to fall victim to trying to evade evolution. It's terrifying. It's terrifying. So that's what, so it is, it's funny, right? It's funny, but it's also frustrating and humiliating and whatever. So when we go about talk about lies, right? It's really that simple. Is there's some guys trying to find instrumental systems of measurement, right? Which we call the sciences, the logics, right? The purpose of a science is discover a logic at a scale. That's what it is. Science is a means of doing research that allows you to testify with increasing precision about the logic of a scale, right? So that's all it is, right? And so we have all these sciences, right? Accounting is a really good science, right? I mean, it's turned into a pretty good work. It could be better, but in other words, in order for accounting to get better, it has to start using measurements that are almost as costly as the benefit, or more costly than the benefit obtained, right? I mean, it's we could fix that, however, by the way. But what is a procedure or a protocol? It's a series of steps, operations to transform state. Well, that's a science, right? As long as it works,
right?
But so and so what is the setup? So so science is a means of identifying a logic. There should be one fundamental logic upon which all the universe operates. There is. We can test those logics internally and vertically. In other words, horizontally and vertically. We can test logics within a domain, and we can test them across a domain. When we do them in a domain, we tend to get goofy language that's conflation. When we do it across domains, then we falsify the language within a domain, right? So that's what you and I are doing, is we're creating a universally commensurable language across all domains by correcting, right? By correcting what's wrong within horizontal disciplines to make it consistent with the one vertical discipline, which is evolutionary computation. So in any event, we're trying to do all this stuff, and we get to the fact that, wow, it's really hard to learn all those sciences. You ain't seen nothing till you learn about lying, because holy shit, is it an amazing field. I have to learn all the sciences of telling the truth. Yeah, well, let me tell you, the way you do that is you learn all the systems of lying so that you don't do any of them. I mean, it's just so frustrating. And so these people say, well, what do you, I don't know how to say what I do, right? I mean, I'm, a philosopher, a theorist, whatever. But, it's the via negativa. I learned about truth by just mastering lying. You got to, and the way you do that is you investigate the people who do all the lying.
Yes.
And it turns out that once you falsify all their methods of lying, the truth, it turns out to be pretty obvious underneath it. Lying is just this amazing set of disciplines that's just as broad as the range of sciences. Now that should be obvious in retrospect, right? I mean, it should be.
It's funny. It's like lying is merely the art of saying the thing that allows you to get away with it.
Yeah, exactly.
that you studied it is interesting, and that there is no other scientist that has studied lying as a science, as a discipline.
No,
that I'm aware
actually,
of.
this is true. I mean, if you go out and you look at the books online, there really aren't any. I mean, there's a couple, there's like a handful, right? But they're children's stories. They're not, right? In other words, Sam Harris's book on lying is a joke. It's an ass clown. It's ass clown.
My!
It's Sam Harris.
That
ass
one's good.
clownery.
That was a clickbait right there.
Yeah,
Sam Harris's
I
ass clownery, and it's
I
like,
know, I know what Sam does, and so I know how he conducts his little intellectual frauds. And so, but that doesn't mean he's always wrong. It just means that when he does those little ass clown frauds of his, it's really easy to explain them, especially when you start with storytelling and loading and framing, right? And empathizing to storytelling to loading and framing, and you start out with the fact that his presumption is feminine justification rather than masculine truth and adaptation, right? Feminine empathizing using storytelling in order to avoid adaptation, in other words, to achieve rationalization, rather than male systematizing in order to force adaptation to more closely reflect the universe.
all right.
So Brad and I are covering this initial bit here, right? We're trying to create this story so that I can show you a couple slides. This is although we're covering all the information here, I don't know. And we're covering all the slides just formalize it. But what we have to do from going forward is we have to create a bunch of slides that walk through this. Now, for anybody who follows this, I kind of wonder, they might be able to follow what we just said. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Could they follow?
Yes.
Could the ordinary person probably can't?
I don't know. It's like that's just like I don't think it was that far out. I
Okay.
don't think it was, but it's like I may be sufficiently hanging with you long enough that I don't know anymore.
Oh, of course, this is the problem, right? I
But I
can't.
don't. Yeah, I recognize it, and it's like, but I don't regard anything that you said as difficult. So I'm like this. I think that it is within range for the average reader.
So we have normal speech, ordinary speech. And from normal speech, we go down to deflationary speech, which goes down to testimony. What can I testify to? And then you go all the way down to mathematics, right? So we go through testimony, we go through procedures and protocols, we go down to into the different, mathematics, and we go, no, excuse me, the arithmetic, accounting and all the related fields. We just go down, we go through, through economics, to accounting, then we get down into the scientific fields, and finally we end up with mathematics at the bottom, which is the dumbest language possible. I love saying that just because I know it taunts mathematicians.
That was for you, James Lindsay.
That was for you, James. I love mathematics is the dumbest language. Well, that's why it's so powerful, is because it's impossible to lie in.
It's hard to lie.
It's almost impossible to lie. It's possible to use it to lie. It's not possible to lie with.
It's detectable.
You're right.
Detectable, unavoidably so.
So conversely, we go up from ordinary language into description,
Yes.
into narrative, into fiction. Now, and then we get into myth, right? We get into mythology.
Yes.
But then there are 3 human faculties.
Yeah.
So we can overload 3 human faculties.
Okay.
I'm going to switch over to the. Can I share my screen now?
Yes.
Too many open. Well, I hit the cancel meeting button. It's because the share is too close to the end button. There we go.
I know.
Can you see that?
I do. Lying.
I'm gonna do it this way.
All right.
Can the audience see both of us as well as this?
Yes, I believe so.
All right. So there are 3 human faculties, right? So the physical, the verbal, and the emotional. I'm gonna now things you can act, things you can speak, and things you can imagine and feel. So I tend to use these three because this helps. I mean, you can break each of these down into more physical things. So I can break it down into sense, perception, sense perception, integration, auto association, evaluation, and wayfinding, which is how we get through it, and then recursive wayfinding, which is how we describe it. So I can play this whole game here, and I don't. But if in general, I just want to break it down into three faculties. So in the physical world, the verbal world, and the emotional world. So we can attempt to load, frame, and overload any one of these emotions, these faculties, right? So typically we use pseudoscience and science and magic, pseudoscience and science to overload the physical. We use philosophy, ideology, and theology to overload the verbal. And we use narration, storytelling to overload the emotional. And we have, and those are all means by which we branch, just like we branch into the physical sciences, the logics, and let's say economics, right? When we have, if we look at testimonial truth, which we're going to do shortly, testimonial truth, as we use it in my work on natural law, we test all sets of those faculties exhaustively. When people try to get away with something, they don't. They try to test a thing only by internally. Does that make sense?
Say that again.
The reason you get away, they only try to test the fictionalisms, right? The deceits internally by magic, pseudoscience, and science, and magic and pseudoscience, right? I'm missing one, aren't I? Magic to pseudoscience is the range. They try to justify it internally with appeals to magic or pseudoscience, right? With verbal stuff, they do it like with set theory and with rationalizations. They try to make it verbal. And with testimonial truth, with emotions, they try to use storytelling and empathy. So these are forms of specialization. Can you mix them? Magic, sophistry, and emotion? Sure, that's what ideology does. Ideology mixes verbs and emotion, verbalism and emotions, because ideology doesn't need to be consistent to this.
Right.
So you can mix and match them, like playing chords on a scale. So that's testimonial truth tests all those faculties. But when you use falsehood and deceit, they try to evade the testing all those faculties. In other words, they try to specialize in just internal testing. It's like the non-contradiction principle, right? So in other words, I don't want to get into that. It's too deep a logic. And then we evade those faculties by asymmetry from information. We obscure, we load, we frame, or we overload. I forgot one there's called denial.
Yes.
Right, I forgot one. I should put that in there.
There you go. What's interesting is it's informational. The basis of the lying is information. Is generating this asymmetry of information in the target.
Correct. Which is, I'm just trying to tie it back to neural economy.
Yes.
Overloading. That's all it is. Right? That's all it is. It's overloading. What you're trying to do, that's what attention is. Attention is just the loudest set of connections.
Yes.
So if you're systemically biased, you're going to hear the loudest connections systemically. If you're empathically biased, you're going to hear the loudest connections getting your attention, which are empathically biased. Most of us are on a spectrum between the two extremes. You find a solipsistic woman on one side, you find an autistic man on the other, and most of us are in between somewhere.
All of us. And there's nobody that doesn't exist on that spectrum.
Oh, correct. Yes.
Oh, I had to specify because you inaccurately stated as most of us, which is all of us.
Well, what I meant was most of us are
not on the end.
Not at the extreme.
Yes, yeah, we're not. Okay, I appreciate that. There's only two that are on the extremes.
Right.
There's two outliers and everybody else.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, my favorite example is I should, whenever I see these video clips, I should save them because they're so perfect. But this one girl who hears about a blood donation thing, and she immediately feels like she has to go donate blood.
Wow.
It's actually, it's a musician or actress. That's an example of female solipsism, right? It does.
Do I want you to do that? You collect them and send me the links.
And then the autistic guy is the opposite, which he says, well, a pattern is X. I mean, that's great, but people are still human, and they're going to behave this way. So these we both see these as irrational. Well, they're irrational in the middle of the bell curve, but they're rational actions for the intuition of the individual making them. Because what is a rational action? It's fulfillment of whatever desire you have. Right now, that person the autist wants to fulfill the desire for things to systemically fit together. The chick wants to fill the desire of feeling that she is giving, that she's nursing or caring, right? Right. These are animal instincts. I mean, I don't want to, I love to use the example of the dog dragging its butt on the carpet because it's kind of revolting. But the whole point is we're chasing its tail. I mean, it's the same. It's all that's going on there. There's not a thinking going on, right? We think there's a thinking going on, but a thinking means questioning. That's what recursion does. That's what thinking is. It's recursion, what we call agency, to analyze whatever stimuli we have, and then making a decision based on analysis of that stimuli. But it's not, the point is that rationality is, we all act rationally, right? We all seize our incentives, but which incentive are we seizing? Some incentives we seize are just to feel good.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. And it will fall into these faculties. The rationalization of behavior within the faculties of a human being.
Correct. So again, I'm going to point a triangle here, right? So we have from the middle, which is testimony, all the way up to the top, which is mathematics. And then we're going to go, how do you lie from here? The male systematizing.
Oh my.
Which gets into a combination of the physical, the verbal, and emotional. And female systematizing. It's female empathizing, which is the extreme forms of overloading, which would be canceling. Overloading, denial, obscuring, loading, framing, and overloading. So we have these means of bifurcation, whereas science is so we tend to think about science is male. It actually is. And the feminists are right. Truth is male. A lot of the stuff that feminists say is right. It's just that they're wrong and complain about it. What did I do? So I say stuff like, sometimes I say shit that's so obvious to me.
It's just funny though. It's like this is like, it reminds me of this. It's like the Muslims are right about women too. It's just the human experience is ridiculous, sir.
It is. And so, but
Feminists were right about science.
it's male. That's a male oppression. Truth is a male oppression. I'm sorry.
I'm writing it in my little book, sir.
You mean you read their stuff, but it's, especially from the standpoint, the vantage point of today.
Yes, sir.
You read this stuff, and they're fucking lunatics, right? I mean, it's not, but it's like
not that they're wrong. It's not that they're wrong. They're just wrong to be wasting time talking about it.
Well, they're wrong to criticize it.
There's better things to talk about. That's all.
Is that true? No, because they're just undermining truth in order to get.
They're after something because it's just this.
Well, they don't want to be held to truth because it means they can't manipulate. The purpose of their emotion is to manipulate. If they're held to truth, they can't manipulate. So we're disempowering them. I'm like, yeah, well, the point of truth for us is to not kill each other. Well, if you want us to abandon truth, we'll abandon truth too. And why don't we just kick your ass and enslave you? Right? I mean, it's a truth.
Patriarchy is nicer the former way.
Yeah, I mean, truth is a reciprocal binding, right?
Yes.
Right? It limits men from using force and women from using undermining. Okay, we're forced into exchanges. Great. Are men more likely to force exchanges? Well, yes, right? Because we tend to the policing. Are women more likely to undermine the use of force? Absolutely. But women are also more likely to undermine truth. You can't win this game, there's only one way to play, and that's trade, reciprocity.
Well, that's not quite true, Kurt.
I'm okay with
other ways to play. They're just not nice.
Yes.
They're irreciprocal and not nice. They get worse and worse. Okay.
So I was trying to show that start out with neutrality, which is that we have these faculties, and falsehood, deceit, seduction, right? Evade those faculties. Well, so does force, for that matter.
Yes.
But in language, falsehood, deceit, and seduction. So we evade those faculties by asymmetry of information. This can go either the male or the female direction. And the male and female direction is difference between systematizing real opportunities and risks versus empathizing real consumptive gain versus adaptive costs and risks. So I should put risks in there too. So the problem for women is that they see all constraint as risk, because their view is that they lack agency to limit risks. And so conversely, there are sex differences in absorption of costs, right, that lead to sex differences. So as we covered earlier, males externalize the cost of childcare onto women. We just are completely blind of it most of the time. And women externalize the cost of politics and economy onto men. And truth. Women externalize the cost of truth onto men. Come on, I was saying that to see if I can get a reaction out of you. So we have a little plan here. Is that we're going to start with faculties, then we're going to go through testimonial truth properties, and we're going to show how we go from faculties to testimonial truth. And then we're going to show that there's deflationary grammars, which are universal compromises at the top. And then there are inflationary grammars, which are sex differences, and inflationary grammars at the bottom of the triangle. And this is going to explain everything, which is what I've sort of been leading up to during our past whatever hour it is of conversation.
No, it's a very excellent explanation of what's going to happen. And it is quite clear to me what's going to happen. And it's awesome.
Well, it also means that we finally made it comprehensible. We tied it all together. The problem, as I said, the problem I was having, this is why Dr. Brad is, thank you, God, for Dr. Brad. is helping me make it accessible for the people who are slightly better than mouth breathers.
Thank you for being the audience, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe below for being better than mouth breathers. And leave a comment if you can write.
Yeah, they know who they know it's not them I'm talking about.
Of course not.
So we've incorporated the grammars and the deceits into the pyramid structure, into the pyramid structure, the triangular structure. And we've made it much easier to understand now, right? Because the way I originally did the grammars, I didn't have this fork. I just went from the truths to the fictionalisms to the deceits. And I kept saying, there's a pattern here. I don't know what it is, but something's wrong. This little gremlin sitting in the back of my head since, I don't know, 2018. And I really had to, it wasn't till I spent all this time on that I really regret on the manosphere and understanding just how
I understand you now. I understand your regret.
Just how bad it was out there for the people. And the just as communism and socialism were let loose by the Industrial Revolution and created all this havoc, what's happened by now is the female has been let loose, and we're seeing all the havoc that's resulting in the destruction of reproduction. So we're sort of completing the cycle. Now we've falsified communism, we've falsified socialism. We're in the process of falsifying all the false claims of the pseudosciences from the 50s onward, post-war period. But, you know, getting it into where we're talking about sex differences and that, yeah, women are fucking evil, that's not gonna go over well. It's okay to say men are evil because we spent 50,000 years creating institutions to control them. But you know, say unregulated women are horrifically evil.
Wait. So you're.
Yeah, I know. I'm creating.
I'm not contending.
I'm creating the opportunity for you to interject and correct me.
No, that was good work, man. That was good work, because it's like men are evil too.
Yeah.
Men are evil and women are evil. And
yeah.
Men are regulated from being evil very well. The masculine mechanisms of being evil are very well regulated by our social systems. We just have no regulation for feminine evil.
Yes.
That's all Kurt's saying.
Yep.
It's not that women are specifically more evil than men, just that their evil is not well controlled by or regulated by our social systems.
Right. And that's all we're doing is we're saying, okay, that's now. And so the really scary part is when you take female evil and you put it into male systematizing, which is called Marxism, neo-Marxism, postmodernism, anti-male feminism, PC woke, anti-whiteness, anti-West. And you realize this is just another, just like theology was, Abrahamic theology was a systemization that incorporated some sort of Greco truth with Egyptian wisdom, except they turned it into a religion of undermining aristocracy. This is the same thing happening again. It's a religion of undermining male meritocracy and a way of undermining truth in order to produce feminine stagnation, which is what the Abrahamic religions produced, is feminine stagnation. All right, so I know that's going to bother a lot of people, but I'm sorry, I just got to get it out there that that's the case. Does that mean we can't complete the transition, complete the decriminalization of Christianity, and so that we can complete the Thomist project? No, it means we can complete it. We just have to have a way of outlawing the female means of undermining.
All right, which puts us back on task.
All right. So I have 3 taunts here at the bottom.
The taunts.
Taunts. So does this mean that cognitively female can actually think? I'm getting this from a book. There's a book called something along the lines of Are Europeans the Only People That Can Think? It's actually a really good book, turns out. But it's really along this line. Can European males the only people that can tolerate the truth? So can women really think? That's a really good question. About what? Can non-European peoples really think? That's a great question. About what?
Those are very good taunts. There's it's like it's begging a question.
How do thinking, reasoning, logic, and calculation differ from lying? So in order to answer these questions, we just need to look at what's happening here. Is lying thinking?
Oh my. That's very interesting question.
Isn't that a great question?
Who thinks of shit like this?
Hurts dude.
I want to tip my hat to you again, sir, because there's some crazy questions. And who thinks of crazy questions and then knows the answers to them?
Well, that's really the issue. What's the difference between thinking about the truth and thinking about lying? I mean, why is it Europeans invented all this shit?
Because it goes like this. It's like, where is the intent of the action?
Correct.
And it is, if I'm interested in the attention of others versus the focus to cause the other to focus on me versus to cause them to focus on the environment. That's the difference.
Yeah, it's empathizing, interpersonal, versus systematizing, political. It's really, really simple, right? And so when men get together, democracy, and as the men practiced it, which was only practiced by men for the reason, and you know, the whole believe women should be believed movement has just proved why in history women's testimony is only equal to 1/3 of man's, because it's completely unfucking reliable. So again, I'm going to go back to the first question. Can cognitively female really think? I don't know. I can't tell if they can tell the truth. It certainly looks like they can't.
Wait, it's like there's a tree forest question here, which is if a woman thinks she's thinking, is she?
Exactly.
It's just hanging out.
However, I'm gonna.
So silly. I apologize for my decomposition.
But I told you this was going to be a mind-blowing and somewhat exasperating line of questions.
It's very disturbing.
It's disturbing.
All right, I'm going
to say it's about what? You know, the problem is, where's my, here you go.
So the issue has to do, the issue has to do with, are you intent upon, it's like information. If you're providing real information to a person besides a lie, you're causing them to be empowered to interact with the universe in a way that enhances their agency. If you are telling a lie, you are attempting to cause them to misbehave at their expense to cause you some gain.
Sorry, I was trying to write that and I lost that. Say it again.
I understand. It's difficult to process more than one thing through the speech center at a time.
Well, it's more like, what the fuck was I thinking of going to write here? I forgot. And then
sorry. So it goes like this.
Doing that was like, wait a minute.
That was hard work. That was real work. So it goes like this is you're going to provide some interaction with a human being that is either informative, which provides real value to them in the future by enhancing their agency within the world, or you're going to provide information to them which causes them to behave in a manner that causes you to gain at their expense.
Correct.
That's all. And
this is-
deliberately misinforming them to not be aware of the expense they're paying, or maybe unaware of the expense they're paying.
Again, I mean, this is why everybody needs to know supply demand curves instead of Venn diagrams.
Yes.
I know your Venn diagram sarcasm comes up all the time, but it's actually so painfully true that Venn diagrams are like clown world, and they're so easy. But the real problem is supply demand curves. So what's the supply demand curve difference between female short-term empathic and male long-term systemic? I don't know, but whatever's in the intersection of those two curves within their limits is what's good, and what's not between those two, it's not good. Sometimes there are trades. All right. We're not going to survive as a tribe unless we move from this region to where there's food and water. Right? In that case, we're going to lose 2 children on the journey. Right? Or there's enough food here and water to last so that we don't lose 2 children on the journey. You know, that's the constraint. So we teach people really useless things like the syllogism and sets instead of supply demand curves. And that's the problem, really. I mean, and we teach, and the reason is that there is a range, not an ideal.
Right.
Because what supply demand curves teach you is everything is okay between limits, not what is good as justified.
Right.
Anyway. So to go back to my question, can I go back to my question?
Yes, sir.
I'm having too much fun with this conversation.
I am too.
Okay, so the question is, can women really think? The answer is, about what? Isn't that fun? You got to ask.
I want to know. It's the incredible joy of being Kurt and coming up with a question like that. No, and he's not joking. He's quite serious.
I'm quite serious, and it's not me I'm not the only person in history that came up with this. There's a long line of men who've said the same thing. They just haven't ever resolved the question, and we've resolved the question. It's about what?
Right.
Can cognitively non-European really think? I don't know. That leads us to the. I forgot to put it in there. That leads us to the next question, which is genetic.
It's not their fault they can't tell the truth.
It may not be.
Which it is. Wait. It just brings home the point, which is the truth. The truth. They are rebelling against the universe itself. Wow.
Why do I spell that wrong all the time? It's id-io. Why do I get? Oh, I get it. Idiosyncratic experience.
Yes. Yes.
I got to put that in.
I like the quotes.
So why can't I get? Where is it?
Okay.
All right. So the problem is the premises. Can they? God damn it! Can they really think? Well, genetically, no. They just feel. Cultural biases, well, we can force it, right? And we can give them education.
Wait. Okay. Okay, I'm hanging.
So the problem is, if we look at it, women can't, non-Europeans can't. And how it differs from lying? Well, basically, if you're raised in European culture. Okay, come on. I put that out there as a sarcasm.
More bait.
For bait, and I guess I delivered it too fast. Right?
It's just like all these are so utterly rude. It's like
Unfortunately, they're true.
The truth is sour, kids. Sorry. These are just questions, okay? They're just questions.
So what we have here is
You have the wrong form of two there. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Well,
I apologize for telling you that.
no, it's okay. I mean, I never
mentioned it before you got too far down this rabbit hole.
So this is masculine.
Yes.
This is European.
Now this all goes in your book, yes?
Yeah.
It's funny, man.
And this is
right.
now, which was the order here? Which is just truth and knowledge, which is just. All right, so I meant to say all this offensive stuff down here.
It is pretty offensive.
It's pretty offensive.
I'm going to dip my hat again because it's so
I mean, it's
offensive.
Well,
it's awesome.
I say it to be provocative.
I want you to know, sir, it works. It works.
It's pretty provocative because you've got to answer the questions. Can the cognitively female really think? Well, about what? Not much. Can the cognitively non-European think? Turns out, yeah, but not much and not often.
It's just what limits are there, right? The limits are smaller.
Right. I mean, Charles Murray did this work, and of course he's hated for it, which is just look at where the inventions come from. Right. And if an invention came from somewhere, look where it was institutionalized. It's just being European. Why? I mean, why is it that everybody else is more cognitively female than we are? Is there truth to the fact that we have a higher rate of autism than they do? It seems to be, but I can't tell from the data because there's so much difference today between, in other words, they're categorizing so much more as autistic,
yes.
And they're not separating it into autistic as in dysfunctional versus autism spectrum, which is an advantage.
Yes, sir.
But autism is just the masculine mind. Is it to do with the fact that Europeans, males and females, are more dimorphic than other races because of the invasion causality? I don't fucking know. I know that we can figure it out,
right?
Probably within the next decade or two. But the point I want to say is, why is lying so endemic in our language, and why did all civilizations base their concepts on lying? Even in European, we just developed philosophy, ideology, and and arguably we're the only people to develop theology, but I don't want to get there. Technically, that you could argue that for both the Jews and Muslims, but we developed European theology, or at least synthetic theology. The Jews separated their law and their religion. The Muslims mixed them, and God knows what the fuck that stuff is. So the Confucians made different philosophies. The 1,000 gods of the Hindu cacophony, which is the most fascinating to me of all. So the Africans still have magic. So, you're looking at this like you say, well, these things are all true, but they're true because of the triangle of truth up here, masculine systematizing here, and feminine empathizing, and damned if almost everybody else invented lying. And we invented it too. We've sophistry, philosophy, ideology. We invented lying too, but it's systemic lying. It's almost cleansed of the empathic. Whereas the Middle East is purely empathic. And China somewhere in between, and India somewhere between China and this Middle East, and Buddhism is somewhere between India and China. So, I mean, there's this interesting spectrum of the feminine to the masculine, which has turned out to be adaptive versus non-adaptive. And interestingly enough, what's the rate of adaptation of the different cultures? How close or how divergent their metaphysics is from the real world, and why is that? Because of the means by the logic which they develop to argue for their cultural group strategy, their group strategies.
That was well said. Thank you.
So what Brad and I get to do next, if I haven't taunted enough humor out of this, I mean, I left my ass off during some of this, is we have to start with the faculties and map them into the testimonial truths. So what do you think, Brad? Did we do good there?
That was excellent, man. Not good. It was excellent. Merely excellent.
How much trouble are we going to get into for that one? I'm thinking there's a lot of trouble in there.
It's unimaginable. So it's an overwhelming cornucopia of trouble.
Okay, so now that I've created all the humor, all the provocative,
right?
Can women think about the condition, the current condition of individuals and the cost of their adapting to change? Yes.
That's what they think about.
Do they think about it, or do they auto-associate about it?
They auto-associate about it.
Yeah, there we go.
They do. That's what they do. That's interesting.
Auto-association of experience is their method of prediction. But women's logic isn't, because it doesn't need to be. It's simply a demand generator.
Could you say that one more time, please?
Women generate demand.
I look at it the same as a baby generates demand. It's like you have to or it dies.
Exactly.
So it just makes whatever noise that it causes the mother to respond in a manner that is conductive of the baby's life.
So you see women becoming very good over time at those things that provide relatively that provide caretaking, right? And that's really, or facilitation or communication, right? That's same process. By understanding a person's current state and a state to get them to, and trying to figure out how to get them there. Now we call this can be education. It can be negotiation and compromise. It can be education. It can be caretaking, it can be manipulation. It can fill the whole circle.
Right.
So when I say can women think, of course, I'm saying about social, economic, political phenomena. No, right? That's the problem. It doesn't mean that none can. It means that without training, they can't. They don't. Right?
They will not. Right.
They will not. Right? Because wherever we look at the women and men who have the most freedom to pursue their interests, they will become even more exemplars of the male things and systems versus women, people, and experiences. And you see this. I mean, I can't remember who brought it up the other day, but nursing in the Scandinavia versus engineering in Scandinavia, right? You're going to get more of that, not more of that bifurcation rather than less, because there's no reason to adapt. If you have the choice, there's no reason not to follow your intuitions. Are we going to get female mathematicians, programmers, engineers, and scientists? Absolutely. Are they going to be as good as the male? Not going to happen. Sorry. On the middle of the curve, maybe. On the extremes, it's always males. Why? Because all innovation requires systemization. And are there going to be men better at? I mean, frankly, look at the number of women who've come up with empirical innovations by just looking at the data that describes human behavior. So when women say some men say there's been no women scientists that are effective, this is a mistake. My favorite woman is, of course, Eleanor Ostrom. And she created the logic. She wrote down the formal logic of the commons. Because what is it? It's a small scale description of how empathic behavior, the logic of empathic behavior at small scales, why they work. She says, why do commons work around the world? Contrary to what people believe, commons break down when the government gets involved. But people are really good at managing commons. They turn out to be great at it, as long as the people managing the commons are the people who live off them. In other words, are dependent upon them.
That's right.
They're really good at it. And so you find women who are really good at this. You find, I always bring up Babbage's wife. You find a Marie Curie, right? You find these women who are perfect people. They're not Einsteins. They're not Maxwell's. They're not, you're just not going to get there, because that's just a different kind of thinking. Even when women do, I've noticed this with the women who teach math are really good at it, but it's not clear they understand it. Right? I don't know how to describe this, but yeah, they're really good at teaching it, because pedagogy is different from application. I notice it in women logicians. It's always trivial. That's really insulting. And women mathematicians tend to be somewhat trivial. Working on puzzles as if it's like philosophers who work on language problems that aren't. They're just a failure to understand the problem of continuous recursive, or the problem I see with so many mathematicians is asinine stuff about the number line. It's just
stuck in loops.
They're basing their decision, their logic, on as if there's one cause and there's two axes of causality, right? The number, there is no such thing as a negative quantity, right? There are two.
Note to self.
So you have a bunch of things like that, or the reason the favorite one is the irrational numbers, right? So imaginary numbers. Yes. Can't believe I did that. All right. So the favorite one is imaginary numbers was just a way of, it's just an absolute value sign for direction. It's fucking ridiculous, right?
It's funny because it is irrational. It was appropriately stated.
So actually, it's no ration. Okay, a ratio, irrational numbers don't reduce to a ratio. Okay, that's
Right.
fine.
Right.
That makes sense because
No,
the word is ratio, not rational. All right, and that's another one of those great things. And then you have imaginary number, which is imaginary. Well, it's not. It's just a fucking operation that compensates for the fact that you're conflating direction and quantity, right? I mean, you know, and then, you know, all this stuff is like these aren't problems. They're ignorances. Right. Failures of obvious disambiguation because of the Platonization of mathematics. So anyway, I started out. I was trying to cover my ass.
You did pretty good, I thought.
Which is that if we look at this grid of male and female supply demand curve, so there's capacities, we're going to see men systematizing over time in populations reaching, in other words, it's going to have a systemic or political, right? Male and female over time. Population, right? It's going to have a political or it's not, or it's going to have a systemic or material. Women, it's going to have a low population. Empathizing, it's going to fail up there and they're going to fail this direction. But over here, men are going to fail, right? I mean, because we're just not going to account for, or we're going to externalize consideration of the cost of human adaptation.
Yes.
Which is increased higher on women and even higher on children.
Yes.
Whereas social adaptation is higher on men and lower on women.
Yes.
Right. And so we have these trade-offs going on, and I'm saying, can women think about what? When women say men are stupid, they're
not wrong.
They're not wrong. We can't think of. We just don't think about that.
We don't think about that stuff.
In other words, it's like, what is?
Sorry.
You know, it's like the guy who says, "Just hit him in the face." It's a simple solution. And the woman says, "You can't do that." I'm like, "Of course you can. It'll solve the problem really quickly, and he'll stop doing that." Right? I mean, but she's trying to find a way to get him there that doesn't create friction, right? That gets him to own the behavioral change. Okay, well, she's thinking about solving this problem of adaptive change. And men are identifying opportunities for adaptive change. Okay, this all makes perfect sense. And it only requires we're bots. You know, we don't have, I mean, the great thing about humans is we still do all the stuff, and though we seem incredibly stupid to me at some times, but the fact is over time, we're actually pretty impressive. So I'm trying to say, can other people think? Well, they didn't have a reason to be truthful.
They had no reason to think.
They had no reason to think.
The problem is that white people, you damn Europeans made me have to think, and I'm a little bit torqued off about it.
And they hate us for it. Thinking sucks, man. Thinking truth sucks. Thinking sucks.
It's like
emotional suppression sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Right? All these things. Truth before face sucks. Yeah, social psychological costs. We ask people to pay really high social and psychological costs in order for the material benefits. But we have this whole culture that was built over thousands of years to say that you are rewarded for paying that twinge you feel whenever you.
That's right.
And you're rewarded for every time you let someone say that, despite that it offends you, right? This is the value of truth as heroic.
That's right. You gloss over it. The insult is just, it's not significant, and
it doesn't matter, right?
Your emotional response is not helpful in this circumstance. So.
Whereas every other culture did the opposite to some degree or another. Other civilizations.
They pander to the outrage.
They worry about feels more than reals. We worry about reals more than feels. Why? Because we practice military epistemology, not political epistemology, not social epistemology. We practice military epistemology. That's why our military order is so important. And we've got to do something about restoring it before the woke people complete their project of destroying our military institutions.
All right.
So I feel like, did I make my case today? I just want to take a break and have a lunch, a little bit of lunch.
Yes,
And then we'll come back and we'll start with our mapping of the,
that would be wonderful.
is that okay?
That'd be great.
I had a lot of fun with this, although I got a feeling we're gonna get some.
Okay, guys. Don't be too mean in the comments below.
No, I don't think they're gonna be mean. I think they're gonna love it. I think the opposition's gonna hate it.
Well, the people opposed to the truth, yes, they will hate it.
That's okay,
That's a desired output, I think.
I suppose.
All right, Kurt. I'll catch up with you with some fresh coffee in a little while.
Like, subscribe, comment.
Please. Thank you very much, Kurt.